Hi there, this video update is going to be a little different than most, as I kind of deal with a subject matter rather than a time-based matter. Today's subject is going to be on the intense purge cycle, of the three-phase cycle that most of us go through when we deal with ourselves and not even knowing what it is. It's the binge, shame, purge cycle that I think most of us identify with. And I wanted to speak with this in layman's terms, at least, so people can understand what this is. And also, too, I'm going to have a write-up on my Facebook page with this. So if you don't want to watch the video, by all means, just read the write-up. I'm going to follow along with that, not word for word. So if you see me looking down, it's not that I'm not paying attention to you. It's just I'm trying to keep along in the same lines of thought. So as I start out all of these videos called Transition Notes from the Journey, this one's going to be called The Pain at the Beginning of the Journey That Causes Deep Emotional Scars That Last for Decades. Fun times, huh? Well, you gotta realize that this is a post or a video I've been wanting to do for a long, long time. The reason why is to inform others of what's going on in the heart and mind of those who are indeed trans. I don't necessarily mean even cross-dresser types. Maybe that's that. I don't want to discount them either. But I'm really focusing on what I've been through, so take no offense if I don't include you here. I'm just saying that this is what I see a lot of my friends have gone through with an emotional hell of dealing with this. So I hope my friends who are non-trans, which is probably most of you, can come away from this understanding this at a deeper level. And thus you're not confused on what some of the stuff is, what we talk about, but you understand the pain that we go through to just be ourselves. Yes, this hurt does last for decades. For me, it was about 4 decades of hurt, and I didn't know what it was. I really didn't. I kept it silent for everyone but myself. I didn't want anyone to know. And most people don't want anyone to know. It's very silent. Let's just go on with the first part of this. There's 3 parts to the cycle. The first part is called the binge part. That's where something triggers the individual, and they have this deep desire in their heart and their soul to dress with clothes of the opposite gender. It has to happen. There's no way around it. If you don't, it becomes suffocating. It's beyond just wanting to dress. It's a deep desire to. It's nothing sexual either. It's just you need to put on female clothing. For me, I had to do it, whether it's a pair of jeans or a top or sometimes a skirt or a dress or whatever. I had to do it, and it was always in absolute silence. And it was always in absolute secrecy. It was never, ever, ever anything else besides secret. I wouldn't dare tell anybody else. I mean, just don't do that. The second phase is the shame/guilt phase, which is really more shame. I'll read this verbatim in my notes. Once the soothing of the binge cycle, putting on clothes, goes quickly away, it is replaced by heaping quantities of shame. The depression and anxiety arrive back in play and are only magnified with large amount of shame on the soul of the affected person. That's me and many of my friends too. The shame is humongous, and it causes scars to be in the heart every time. And each new time, it's a deeper scar, and it sucks. Third phase, beyond the shame phase, is the purge phase. That's where you throw everything out. You find a trash can in a private area that no one can find out that you're throwing women's clothes out at. You're good. You're basically taking your sin and washing it away. This is lesson 101 on shame versus grace. Little did I know that this was a foreshadowing in life of this, but it is. But you wind up throwing away everything. I mean everything. Nothing is kept. Absolutely nothing is kept, because you can't. You can't risk any trace of anyone knowing when this shame ends and all of the other crap comes washing back. The depression, the anxiety, the everything like that. And the risk of being outed, oh gosh, no, that's a huge no-no. So at any rate, when this purge cycle ends, and you purge and you throw everything in the garbage can, you say the prayer that I think everyone has said who's religious and probably not even not religious, says, Dear Lord, I am done with this. I promise to never ever do this shameful thing again, wearing women's clothes. I'm not a pervert, but I feel like one, and I'm not an abomination, but your words in Deuteronomy 22:5 say that I am, because I wore women's clothes. I'm done, Lord. I will never do this again. I promise. I promise. Of course, the Lord's looking down, just kind of tapping his fingers, tapping his toes, going, I know how this ends. So, yeah, you don't have to promise to me. So, but the Lord knew better. He was always just waiting for me and all of us go through this to be honest with ourselves, and of course, him too. But we couldn't. We feel the pressure to play a proper role in our society. Anything less than that proper role would not be sufficient. At the end of that purge cycle, at least for me, the depression would turn up a notch or go down a notch, depending how you look at it. And as would the anxiety, it would just be so awful, and even more emotional numbness, usually accompanied by low-level anger as well, all through the process, except for the very first part, the binge. The binge creates a relief, but little do we know that I promised God I wouldn't do this. And of course, days or weeks later, suddenly it would come back because something would trigger it. Something would trigger the need to be female. It was strange to me because I always thought I was a pervert. I was an idiot. I was misled. I was misguided. And yet the more I went to church, it didn't matter. It just wouldn't go away. It was my secret. And every time the scars would grow larger, and rather than scars ever healing, they're open, I'd go around them and ignore them, that they even existed in my heart. It's sad, but it's true, honestly. How can I explain this? This has to be a thing where it has to be the individual and never contacting anybody, letting anyone know. In the case of a male to female person like myself, you over-masculinize, which is a term used to say, I play the male role, I'm going to play it well. And I did. I faked out everybody, including myself, because I did not even know. I thought I was just a filthy cross-dresser. Society looks down on me. That's what I should be. That's what I was, right? No. I didn't realize I was transgender until I was 43 years old. I mean, God made a miracle in my life in 1995 where he took this binge, shame, purge cycle away from me. And as I think I'm the only one I know who's actually had this get out of jail free card where you don't get caught into this anymore. And I was so happy to not be dealing with this anymore. I mean, anyone who's cross-dressed and understands how painful this is, and how every time you go through a new phase of throwing things out, for me it was like monthly or bi-monthly, and I wasted thousands of dollars, and all the emotional pain of not being able to tell a single soul, the loneliness to it, and thinking I'm an abomination, and all this other crap that, well, you know how it goes. It went away. It literally went away. It's an extraordinary set of circumstances, and one of these days I'll talk about that alone. It all happened at the end of 1995. And literally within a couple, 3 weeks, whatever it was a very short time span, I walked into a new church. I met this gorgeous gal, and about 6 months later we started dating, and we were married. Sadly, the marriage is over some 17, 18 years later, or 19 years later. But there's a lot of reasons why a lot of good things came from that. And I'm not going to ever discount or want to go back and change it. I've learned too much deep things in life, and God has opened my eyes to so many things. So I'll go back to the scars of the second phase. I want to explain this in a spiritual role, a religious role, if you will, that the person goes to the second phase, which is the guilt-shame phase. And I'm just going to read this verbatim, but, well, no, it's kind of boring. But trying to be that role, trying to play the role, and you think after the purge cycle is done, you say the prayer, everything's all right. And that is until about, I don't know, a few days later, a few weeks later, it's re-triggered, and you do this all over again. Fun times, huh? So many things I wish I had back. I had this cute pantsuit. It was jade green, beautiful set of shoes with it, mild heels. They're only about this high, and it was really pretty. Threw them out. The jewelry that went with it, threw it out. Yeah. Thus my credit cards went too high when I was younger. But eventually paid us all off and everything. But the realization is that I just didn't want to realize anything. I buried it from myself. So after I was handed out of this get out of jail free card, my story kind of veers from a lot of people's, most people, is that they're still stuck in this up and down thing until they realize who they are. And the depression gets worse, and numbness gets worse, and the anxiety gets worse. Those things stayed with me the entire time. I did not know any of this stuff. I was stupid. I just thought, well, play the role. I was working in my church doing video things. I was busy doing Bible studies or helping out with my little kids at the time, and I didn't know. I mean, I had no urge to cross-dress whatsoever. It was taken away from me. Thank you, God. So to me, I was done with this. I had no idea there was a difference between gender roles or transgender, transsexual was the term back then, or anything. I didn't know. I just didn't know. I think it was hidden from me, honestly, to take care of my wife at the time and my kids and have them. And for a lot of reasons that I'm still unfolding, I had kids. So I don't ever want to go back and change it because I have 2 kick-butt kids, and that's that. So it wasn't until about the age of 39, back in 2009, where I started to realize that, hey, I'm depressed. Why am I so depressed all the time? I don't know. Maybe it's my job. My job started to suck about that time for a lot of reasons. And I thought, maybe if that's the part, maybe it's my marriage, maybe it's me, maybe it's, I don't know. And I started doing homework about the end of that time. And that's when some of these gender issues started creeping back in, albeit slowly. Dr. Anne Vitale talks about not gender identity disorder, but she talks about a much better way of looking at this. It's called Gender Expression Sensory Disorder, where if you don't have a chance to actually walk out and present to public as your real gender, that's when this gets bad. And I think that is a much better way of explaining gender identity disorder, as they call it, or gender, whatever it's called in DSM-5. Too bad Dr. Vitale's words didn't get put into the DSM, but there's a lot of politics behind that. Look at the name Dr. Kenneth Zucker and you'll realize why it never got put in. I'm not going to go into a dissertation on that, but do your homework on that. You'll see why. But whatever the case is, and however it is now, doesn't actually mean anything to the suffering individual out in the streets who won't tell anybody because there's depression so bad. And it's about the age of 40 or so, my drinking started to uptick constantly to deal with the ever-nagging anxiety and depression. Do you remember all the pools of sweat that were underneath my arms? That was the anxiety. Hard at work. Little did I know back then. I didn't know at all. And the emotional numbness got worse and worse as the years went by. At first I thought, I just need testosterone replacement. That'll help. But I didn't want to take anything. Not Xanax, not antidepressants, not any of that stuff. So, as I did my research, all things led back to gender issues. All. Not some, all. And it took a good 3 to 4 years for me to realize who I was as a human being. To realize that, yeah, I am transgender. And after my 43rd birthday, I realized that. And I tried to bury it with even more alcohol. And even though I wasn't cross-dressing at all, and hadn't for, 18, 19 years by that time or whatever, every other symptom was there. Just as anyone else walks through this. The intense depression. The lack of feeling like you have any real purpose in life. You're just living day to day to live it. You're just trying to exist. And that just sucks. Honestly, it was just so bad. I didn't even know why these things were related. I just knew depression was there. And that was the cure. The more I looked at hormones going on, I have that symptom, I have that symptom. This is what I think about. This has plagued me. And here comes the kicker. I kind of thought for a long time that I let the angels or the demons back in so they'd come back sevenfold. A lot of you Bible people know this. Bible study people know this issue and know this. It had nothing to do with me. And when I finally realized it had nothing to do with me, as well as Deuteronomy 22:5, the cross-dressing verse, there's a great verse, I'll actually link it in the notes, or a great write-up from a Jewish rabbi. He goes back almost 3,000 years and explains this in terms of when it was written. They make way more sense than anything anybody's actually spouting out in the year 2015 or 2016 we have here. So the historical reference on this is important, very important. And I ask everyone to read that if you're curious about why this is in the Bible. Deuteronomy 23:1 has the set free verse for me. Yeah, Old Testament. It talks about crushing a man's balls and going, not kidding, it goes is an official sound effect. And if you're not fit to have good testicles, you're not allowed in the courts of the city to do business. I had a biking accident when I was 10 years old and still have pain down there. And I knew I was set free when I was in the Old Testament, and I realized I'm the Gentile, and that's what Jesus came for. The Gentiles, the ones that couldn't fulfill the law. How many preachers today and politicians insist that we fulfill law under what they believe is the law? We can't fulfill it. That's why the suicide rate's so high, because the shame is so intense in the middle of that binge purge cycle. I'd rather die than tell anybody. In fact, Dr. Anne Vitale, in that one write-up, I will link here too, talks about how the stresses are so much greater for those going through this than most other stresses. Not to say that people don't have stress. That's not the point at all. But this journey is not for the faint of heart, and it will take everything in you to just stay alive. And I had my moment of not almost staying alive in after summer of 2014, and after that I survived it somehow. The next day I looked into a mirror. It took me almost 15 whole minutes to say the 3 words that I didn't want to say. There were so many misfires on that. I 15 minutes staring into a mirror, and I was wearing my light green, mint, dark green shirt compared to this top, and the sweat was pooling down the bottom of my arms. The anxiety was super high. And I wanted to prove the night before was real. I said it out loud. I finally said it. I am transgender. The anxiety went away instantly. Being honest with myself was the best thing to ever happen. That means I was honest with God. And I'll be honest with other people as time went on. Problem is, not everyone wants to deal with someone who's transgender. They think they're mentally ill, which is a false assumption. They think that we should be off hormones, even though hormones, day one, cured all of my depression, anxiety, emotional numbness for the first time in my life. I was able to feel my emotions. I mean, how cool is that? But there are many preachers out there, for example, Dr. Russell Moore from the Southern Baptist, and you have Dr. Michael Brown, who insist that hormones are bad. But if hormones cure it, why would you want someone back in a depression state? Well, you just need to be prayed over and have faith, and it's all BS. Every bit of that I bought into. And when I started seeing that their cure for this is not co-joining with reality and what God's cure wants you to be you. You look different. You are different. Guess what? It's okay. Other people won't think it's okay. They fight against us just to go to stupid bathrooms. And I'm so sick of talking about that because I go pee and you go pee and we're all happy. Hey, that rhymes. But you know something? I smile now. I no longer drink to kill the pain. In fact, I hardly drink at all. And the binge purge cycles of the past were some of the biggest learning tools I've ever had because they involved so much pain. Pain that I couldn't tell anyone about. Ever. Until this all happened. So I'm transgender. It's a hard road getting to that point. But I'm still alive. I can still help others. I can still provide for my family. I can still go out there and kick ass. And I plan to do it every day. That was something I could never do before with the anxiety and the depression and the numbness. I was barely able to exist much past 8 o'clock at night without a drink in my hand. Now, iced tea is fine by me. Thank you all for watching this, and I hope you understand a little bit more what this binge purge cycle is and how detrimental it is to the health of everyone who goes through this. It's that bad. Thankfully, I've got a second lease on life. But 50% of people who are like me attempt suicide. And they're too ashamed to say anything. That's why shame is so prevalent. I pray to God that people can just learn to live and accept each other and learn from each other rather than people ending their lives or people making fun of others who are different. It's a shame, isn't it? God bless and thank you for watching all this.